I saw you last night and got that old feeling.
Welcome to a new edition of the Neon Jazz interview series with jazz musician, composer, and arranger Johnny Summers. He opened up about his latest 2020 CD called Baker's Dozen. This cat has a lot of energy and stage appeal. He has a clever and natural approach to life. It was at the age of 11 in his bedroom listening for the first time to Harry Connick Jr., Blue Light, Red Light, that it made a connection with him, and that would branch out into Chet Baker and many others. We talked to Johnny around the time the COVID-19 quarantine was just beginning, so please dig this interview.
Well, hey, thanks for taking a minute out for Neon Jazz today. I appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thanks for calling.
You bet. So let's talk about Baker's Dozen. Give me an idea, kind of artistically, what you were going for with this album.
Wow. I think when I was a young player and I was in university and I was listening to a lot of Chet Baker, a lot of other players too, but a lot of Chet Baker. Like he was probably one that I transcribed and listed the most. If I'd made a record at that time, it would have been very much, following every nuance, if Chet never played anything like that, I wouldn't play anything like that. That kind of an approach. But I didn't. So, making it, we did it in a few sessions in the last few years while I was making other records. And the plan was to do something that was had a few different angles to it. So loving the music of Chet Baker, I wanted to pick kind of my favorite recordings of his for the songs, for the track listing, that also resonated with me, that I thought I could bring something to. The ones being a little different than that are My Funny Valentine and Let's Get Lost, because My Funny Valentine especially, that one's been done so much that I think I was almost terrified to ever do that song. Everybody has a great recording of that song, and I didn't. That gets a little daunting, and songs like that get played a lot. So because of that, they start to disappear from our vernacular. But so I had a few different thoughts. One was Chet recorded in such different, with such a different sound, and of course a huge career, and he had, most of my favorite Chet is from the 50s, with Jerry Mulligan and, the record Chet Baker Sings, and, and then some of the stuff that he did that was with Art Pepper, and that was kind of like the early, when he was listening so much to the Birth of the Cool record. I really liked the music that he did at that time. And so he also, the very last, I think it's the last recording. You might know this better than me, but it was called The Last Great Concert. I think it was the NDR Big Band in Europe, and I believe it was recorded just a couple weeks before he passed in '88. And it was a big band and strings. So there's another record, his record Embraceable You, that's just him and guitar and bass, and where it's very exposed as well. So there's kind of like nonette style stuff, as well as big band, as well as quartets, and so because I work in all those kind of size ensembles regularly, I thought that was something that really appealed to me as well. So my two kind of things were, there were a couple tracks like Time After Time and like Someone in Love, where I wanted to be, and I Get Along Without You Very Well, that I wanted to be a little bit more thinking of Chet, in that kind of vibe that he had, like Time After Time, doing it a little bit more in the cool jazz vibe that Shelly Manne or Leroy Vinnegar would set up, and Russ Freeman and stuff. But then going back to My Funny Valentine and Let's Get Lost, I thought, well, what would Chet sound like if he was, playing and recording today? So if I played lyrical and some of the concepts of his playing that I really appreciate, singing really lyrically. When he would use vibrato as a singer, he would have this he had this silver tone in his voice that I love, and he would have this really controlled vibrato at the end of his lines that I just found really soulful. So I wanted to pull that forward because I still really like that today. But with Let's Get Lost, I wanted to make something that was just a little, just fun. And I thought by doing it to a bit of a backbeat, like, kind of I guess like a funk kind of groove, but not like anything driving funk, something that would be, again, like cool jazz was, where it's in its beginnings, where it was a little bit more relaxed, and just a little bit more everything feels good. And then have, by me and the sax player, Shane Stats, by us having us alternate solos, that's a little bit more of the kind of accessible or jazz, like where if I want someone who, is a friend of a friend or is coming to jazz for the first time, might be a little bit more open to a track like that. And I like that style of music too. And then with My Funny Valentine, it was the first orchestration I did after studying with Maria Schneider, who is my hero, and I just think she's unbelievable. And spending time, I got to perform with her on her music with the Calgary Jazz Orchestra, and so I'm the director for that group. So I was prepping the group and studying her music, and then as I had for a long time, as we all do. And then when she came up, it was great to see how she worked with her music. But then when I was studying with her, as for composition and arrangement and stuff, we talked so much about what everybody else did as well. So, and one of the things, being a singer and writing a lot of big band music for soloists, instrumentalists, or for singers, we talked a lot about that. And so she talked a lot about Harry Connick Jr. She used to copy for him, and what he does to set strings and big band. And we talked about Gil Evans, and of course her big hero was Bob Brookmeyer. And so we talked about a lot of that. And then we studied Bob Brookmeyer's arrangement that he wrote on the album Standards. And I definitely still had that Chet Baker's last concert in my head, where he had big band and strings. So there's definitely a nod to Maria Schneider in that track. I hear a lot of her influence in that, and I like that in the orchestration. So I thought, if Chet Baker were alive today and he was working with, a modern orchestrator arranger, that might be a way that it would sound. And then, funny enough to me, just before the single came out, the first track, I was working with a student, and that I'm always a big proponent of for students to learn the language, to go all the way back to Louis Armstrong and then all the way up to Chris Potter, and to study, list the solos and transcribe them and study them and play them and learn the music that way. And one of the tunes he picked was a Chet Baker tune I transcribed when I was in university, and it's called I Fall in Love Too Easily, which is on the record too. But when he was playing through the solo, I started to get the giggles a bit, because I recognized a pattern and a line and an inflection that was what I played on the solo of My Funny Valentine on the flumpet. So I was, the music kind of, when you study someone and you love someone, I think it stays with you forever. And then, which leads me to the end of it, which is basically on tracks like Embraceable You. I love Chet's recording of it so much, and I love that song a lot. But I also love Winton, and I also love, so many different players' approach to ballad playing and to that song. And so I said to the rhythm section, frequently I would say, let's just be a little bit free as well, to explore. Like, if we're feeling a certain way that day, let's be creative and follow it. It doesn't have to be, locked into this style of playing. So on Embraceable You, it was, let's just play and see how we play. On It Could Happen to You, same thing. I wanted to have our own arrangement for it. But then on Time After Time, we steal from Russ Freeman's piano intro and stuff that he originally did with Chet. And then on Let's Get Lost, the nod to Chet as well. There's a line I wrote in the saxophones and the string quartet that this that Chet plays underneath Russ Freeman when he's playing the melody on the piano for that section on his recording. So there are still kind of things that I took from Chet, but also to be a little bit more free to explore who we are as well. If that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely it does. So talk to me about where you were born and raised and kind of how you got the jazz bug.
Sure. I was born and raised in Calgary, Alberta, Canada, and it's a city of about 1.5 million, and which is big for a Canadian city. Of course, Canadian cities are very spread out compared to being in the States. I think when I was very young, we had a piano in the house, and I was always drawn to it. I asked for piano lessons when my mom says I was like 3, and when I just barely turned 4, she put me in piano lessons. And so I did, the Royal Conservatory, and I enjoyed it, but I was really drawn to different styles of music. And when I think early I heard soul music and Motown music, and that was some of my favorite from childhood. Then when I was, I think maybe 13, 14 years old, a friend of mine lent me two very important albums to me, and it was Harry Connick Jr.'s album Blue Light, Red Light, and a Louis Armstrong record that was recorded live in, I believe, 1964 in, I think it was Denmark. I can't believe I just forgot that. But and these two, so the live Louis Armstrong CD and the Harry Connick Jr. one, I'd been listening to a lot of pop music and stuff that you listen to from pop radio when, with all the other kids around me, we were all listening to, whatever was big at the time. And so when I heard Louis Armstrong, I heard so much soul, the nuances. I didn't know these words, of course, but it was the nuances, the way he would sing with so much smile and passion and sound in his voice. And the band had so much energy. Danny Ocean on drums I didn't really even know what the word swing was, but he swung so hard, and so they were all so interesting, and it just sounded so fun and so alive and so real. And I started playing trumpet in junior high school. I joined the band, and I think my mom got me she got me another couple Louis Armstrong records that she found at a garage sale or something. And I just started really exploring his music, and I just couldn't believe music like that existed. And then what brought it home for me was the Harry Connick Jr. record had been recorded about 6 months or so previous to that, and so it was brand new, it was fresh, and it blew me away. I couldn't believe that somewhere in the world today this was happening and this was possible. It didn't all have to sound like all of the radio stations, and the big band. I wanted to play trumpet like Leroy Jones. I wanted to play trumpet like Roger Ingram, the lead trumpet player, which I don't think anyone can play like either of those guys. And Leroy is my hero. I got to eventually meet him and befriend him and hear him a lot when I was down in New Orleans. And then I wanted to sing like Harry, and like Louis, and I wanted to write and arrange like Harry. When I found out that he'd written all the songs on Blue Light, Red Light, and he'd written all the arrangements and orchestrated it all, that really hit me too. If you really wanted, for me, if I was saying to myself, if you really wanted to be an artist that way, then you have to learn how to do that. And then I got the jazz bug. Those records hit me so hard that I went into other stuff that both of those artists did and learned it all, as best I could at the time, and continued studying it through university and even till today. Then I started exploring. I heard Clifford Brown playing Stardust on the With Strings record, and it was I didn't even know who it was. It was on a sampler that had no name that someone gave me, and I just remember listening to Clifford on repeat, that one track on repeat for hours one night, with a tear in my eye, just thinking, goodness, if I could play half as good as this and touch people a quarter as much as this track is reaching me at as a, you know, a 16-year-old.
Sorry about this.
No problem.
Hold on.
Call the office. Thank you.
Yeah, sorry. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No worries. I just remember thinking that if I could make just one track that was as soulful as that and would reach anyone, as you know, like even half as much as that would reach me. And then when I found out it was Clifford Brown, I started finding Clifford Brown records and eventually bought everything I could find and then it was just a constant exploration. Then I got into Chet Baker, into university now, and I really liked Dizzy Gillespie. I really liked Miles. I really loved Chet Baker, and then I heard Wynton Marsalis, and I loved City Movement. Coming in one of the box sets he did, the Live at the Village Vanguard, the 7-disc set, that just knocked me off my seat. The band was incredible. And some of the guys like Ben Wolf playing bass, and he used to play on the Harry records, so I started following him, and it was just continuous. It was just whatever I could find. So I took a job at in high school in the summers, and then I would work there when I could in weekends and stuff. Sometimes in university, I took a job at a record store in the jazz classical department, and I loved it because people would come in and I could just tell them, yeah, Leroy Jones, Mo Cream from the Crop, you're going to love this, or music that I was really into. And then I started chasing Oscar Peterson and his swing, and I think you hear a bit of an influence of that on this record. And because I always like when my rhythm sections like to swing out like that, like Ray Brown and Ed Thigpen. And then the record they did with the recordings they made with Clark Terry, and I just love Clark Terry to pieces. And so I just started chasing everything. And then I got into Coltrane and Giant Steps. It was the first time I heard it. I was like, okay, yeah, this sounds really hard, but I didn't really get it. And coming back to it, more and more, I started to really like it until I started to transcribe it and then started to work on, playing that kind of stuff too. And so I came up here. I did a degree in jazz studies and classical performance here in Calgary because I found a teacher named Al Muirhead who was beautiful and lyrical and swung and reached back to a generation where they did learn everything from the recordings, and it really was all about, like Louis Armstrong, it was all about, or Clifford, nuance and lines, and I loved that. And Al just has his record that he just put out. He's 84 now, and we still play together all the time, and he's like my second dad. And he has so much nuance in his sound, and so I wanted to study with him, and I learned a ton from him. And then coming out of university, I went straight to New Orleans to search a New Orleans swing and the New Orleans sound. And I got to meet Shannon Powell. I got to meet Louis Ford and Dwayne Burns and all these great musicians down there. And I fell in love with the city. I was going to move there. I was accepted to do a master's in jazz studies at the University of New Orleans, where Ellis Marsalis was the head. And I got to meet him, and he was a hero of mine too. There's a recording of him playing piano for Harry Connick Jr. on Stardust that when I was 16, 17, I heard, and absolutely, because of falling in love with that tune, especially after hearing Clifford do it. And Ellis was playing piano, and when Harry was singing, it was just absolutely beautiful. So I got to meet a lot of these heroes and go hear them play. But to go do, as an out-of-state or out-of-country, I think they offered me a TA, but I couldn't afford it. It was very expensive, and the dollar exchange was very expensive. So I thought, well, I'll come back and I'll work for a bit. So I came back, started my first quartet, did my first record, started touring and started working as a musician. Bought a house and tried to get a little bit more established. And then when I was 26, I realized I still just had this huge love of big band that wasn't being satiated. And there were some rehearsal bands around, but they were, and there's some very good players in them, but it was a rehearsal band mentality. Let's get together and read, and maybe we'll play some gigs. But it wasn't, it wasn't wasn't the same focus that I was after. So one of my old professors, who's a fantastic saxophone player, fantastic woodwind player at the university, and he's originally from Spokane, but he said his entire teaching career at the university up here. And Dr. Jeremy Brown, and I was over at his house, and we were playing some tunes, and I was saying that, you know, I want to play in a band that's trying to swing like Basie and trying to play Kenton and chasing Maria Schneider, and, you know, and explores all these incredible sounds, Mingus, and plays as a unit. And I had never led a big band before, and I'd never really written for a big band. And he said, well, I think you're the one to put it together. And he really encouraged me. So I called all the players that had a unique voice or were really good section players in the city, you know, told them my concept, and founded the Calgary Jazz Orchestra, and we're in our 15th season right now. And my previous teacher, Jeremy Brown, and Al Muirhead, they play in it, friends I went to university with, and musicians, you know, some of the top call musicians in the area. And we just really use it as professional development. So I mean, I've gotten a lot of training from that as well, and learned how to, you know, be a better band director and music director, and then how to orchestrate. I think I passed 300 big band orchestrations this year, and I write most of what we perform with the group, unless we're doing, you know, specific repertoire, Buddy Rich or whomever's music that we're playing, and then in the middle of all that, I've continued to, you know, I did go to New York, lived there for a while, and I was considering moving, and I was working with a manager from there for a lot of years. Got to go do some playing with Ellis Marsalis, and got to go do some work around, and he was, you know, really trying to get me to move down there, and I almost did a degree when I was a master's down there as well, but I continued to just kind of self-direct study. So, you know, I got to study with Laurie Frank, I got to study with John Faddis and with Wycliffe Gordon, and, you know, just if I heard someone that I loved something about their playing, I would, you know, fly there, or if I was traveling through there, I'd take lessons. And now, of course, I'll Skype them. And there's a trumpeter that I love, an English trumpeter that's living in Denmark right now named Gerard Presenser, and I was taking some lessons from him, and you know, just to continue studying and continue, you know, working on things, because I don't really think that ever stops. Yeah.
Very cool. So I think you've covered a lot of ground here with me, so I think I have one last question for you, and it's this. Everyone has a perception of you, your family, your friends, co-workers, you know, students. But you know yourself. Who do you think you are?
How do I make that a short answer? Yeah, you're right. Everyone has a perception. Even when someone first meets you, they have a perception, or they first come across your music. If someone heard one of these tracks, they might say, "Oh, I don't hear enough Chet in there to celebrate Chet." And then another one, they'd say, "Well, I hear too much Chet." I mean, everyone has a different perspective or a different expectation of you. But I think I take what I do very seriously, and I just don't think I take myself that seriously. So I absolutely love music, and I think, I know, to me, music is about reaching an audience. So when I'm performing, I like to talk to them and laugh with them and have fun, and then be serious about the music and also be fun in the music, because, you know, as jazz is an incredible art form and music is an incredible art form, but I think that I've noticed in myself and in some of the players I've played with and stuff that we can take it too seriously. So I started realizing that this should be fun, and exploring music should be fun, and practicing every day should be fun, and, you know, it shouldn't feel like a life sentence. It should feel something that really lifts us up, you know, gives us hope and lifts us up spiritually and emotionally. So I think that's it. I think I take what I do very seriously. I just don't take myself that seriously, and I try to just keep learning and having fun and connecting with people through the process.
Cool. That's a great answer.
That's a
Great
hard
way to
question.
wrap everything up. Oh, yeah. It's,
Okay.
I saved it for the last. But, hey, thank you for taking some time out today. I really appreciate it, man.
My pleasure.
Thanks for listening and tuning in to another Neon Jazz interview, where we give you a bit of insight into the finest cats in California, Kansas City, New York City, and spots all over the world, giving fans all that jazz. And thanks to Johnny for his time, music, and stories. If you want to hear more interviews, go to Famous Interviews with Joe Domino on the iTunes Store. Visit Neon Jazz at youtube.com. And for everything Neon Jazz all the time, go to the neonjazz.blogspot.com. Until next time, enjoy the jazz, my friends.
You're still in my heart.
Neon Jazz.